Employers, customers are deputized subordinates of the talent industry. How online hiring deputized even its paying consumer into unpaid labor. Hi, my name is Sarah Trouble. I am the founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective, the first anonymous user reviews for job ads across the U.S. This is a level of go-to-market awareness as well as public service for all the gaslighting out there. We are a group of career-seeking professionals who help protect each other from scam and fraud that's rampant in the job market. Yeah. This is a level of go-to-market awareness. I said public service. This comes from a Substack that I write that goes out a couple times a week to economists, journalists, whatnot, people in the world who are interested in economics. And I make this to a larger audience just to make it accessible. The type of paradigm shift / restoration that I'm driving at requires you to gather a wide variety of people to kind of join you on this type of bus and, making it more accessible to a larger group by meeting them where they're at, whether they consume their media via video, via audio, via written. That's kind of the name of the game. Yeah, so I'm going to start from the beginning and read through and kind of talk through what I say. Grocery stores built for investors, not for selling food. Picture this. Imagine entering a grocery store because you're hungry. But instead of food, the shelves are lined with pictures of food. You can't eat it, you can't buy it, but every time you reach for something, the store records what you would have bought if it were real. The shoppers get frustrated, the store managers feel confused and annoyed, but the advertisers and data vendors, they're thrilled because your hunger generates more profitable data than your satisfaction ever could. The store didn't run out of food, it ran out of the incentive to sell real food. It stopped being built for people trying to get something to eat and started being built for the identity and comfort of those who look down on the hungry. In a functioning two-sided labor market, job seekers and employers rely on each other to send and receive accurate signals. Job seekers signal qualifications, employers signal real hiring demand. That exchange, protected, legible, and mutually accountable, is what creates a labor market. But when hiring moved online, both sides were quietly reassigned new roles, not by choice, but by the architecture of the digital hiring economy. Job seekers stopped being protected consumers, employers stopped being true demand. Once both sides lost their functional roles, there was no longer a functional labor market. Who this is for? Job seekers, why this feels like personal failure when you've done nothing wrong. It's not your performance, it's misaligned market roles. Employers and HR, why more posts don't yield more hires, why talent shortages persist despite applicant floods, and why your signals no longer mean what you think they mean. Policymakers and economists, why this isn't a skills gap, it's misalignment. Job seekers lost consumer protections when hiring went online, and employers lost demand authenticity. Your newspapers demonstrate it. Your JOLTS hires to opening shows it. Platform builders, how current incentives reward churn over hiring and why AI applied to only one side accelerates collapse. Jevons paradox, thank you if you're into economics. This is not a behavioral problem, it's an architecture problem. What happened to job seekers and why it matters for employers? Job seekers entered the digital hiring system as market stakeholders, one half of a two-sided labor market exchanging labor for wages. Under older intermediaries like newspapers, they were protected consumers. Newspapers lost money for misleading job ads, creating accountability for both sides. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's a reason newspapers didn't allow SaaS postings from employers. There's a reason newspapers didn't allow free postings from employers, and the protected consumer status of the other market stakeholder is intricately related. The fact that it's not allowed anymore is demonstrating how the architecture has failed. When hiring moved online, that protection vanished and a new role was added. From protected consumer to unprotected consumer, U.S. citizens consume job postings, ATS portals, resume scoring, and recruitment platforms without any right to accuracy or transparency. They can't tell real jobs from fake ones. They don't know if the resume didn't get through the ATS gate or if a recruiter or a sub-recruiter screen them out. They don't know who they're working with when everything is white labeled, and that's socially fine. When things don't work, they're told it's a personal failing for not doing something they were never told about that no one may even know. And in online hiring, a new role was also assigned: unpaid revenue drivers. Their clicks, retries, profile updates, reassessments, and emotional labor became the monetizable engine for the talent industry. The less U.S. citizens succeed in the job market, the more profitable they become for the online talent industry. Market stakeholder to unprotected consumer and revenue source. Their unemployment is the profit margin increase of the talent industry. And while still being publicly described as talent candidates or misfits, the level of lack of ethics involved with this, the impoverishment of the U.S. citizenry, 160 million people, for this nonsense is just atrocious ethics. They didn't choose these roles, the system assigned them. And the truth, the same thing is here, the same reassignment happened to employers. My morals are driven by the fact that I've experienced this market, but the fact is the truth has happened. It's happened to all of us. There's three structural roles of employers, not what they intend, but what they've become. Valued customer, what they think they are. Employers believe they're the buyers of talent, the demand side of the labor market, paying for services and accessing qualified candidates, and that's still true on the surface. Just like, let's be clear, skills misalignment is still somewhat true. Job seekers still are users of the market, and occasionally they're just the wrong person for the job. It's still true. But the system has also quietly reassigned employers two additional roles. Number one, deputized enforcer. By paying for the job postings, using ATS vendors, and continuing to participate in broken platforms, employers unintentionally signal to policymakers, economists, and job seekers that the market is functional, even when they themselves know that it isn't. Their very participation is seen as evidence of success. Every time a company posts more jobs, it strengthens the illusion of labor demand, even when posting is frozen, duplicated, or evergreen, or never intended to hire at all. Their participation validates the architecture to observers, even as using the market for evergreen postings or, investor engagement scams, even as using it that way demonstrates that the architecture has already failed. Employers have the resources to interrogate this. They're the stakeholder, the customer stakeholder in a two-sided market that could fix this. They choose not to. They have the procurement teams, data analysts, HR leadership. They could demand transparency. They could require proof of hire rates before renewing ATS contracts. They could say, we're not going to buy with Greenhouse again until Greenhouse publishes to job seekers when it's their ATS system they didn't get through. They don't do that. They don't put those requirements on there. Their choice to not ask questions is still a choice. It's a choice. The problem is rarely active malice. They're not out there to get people they don't know, but they're just passively complicit. Employers, by funding systems without demanding accountability, become the enforcers of a market architecture that profits from the very unemployment of the American citizenry that it creates. They're not just trapped. They're choosing the trap because it makes them more comfortable. The market isn't selling them functionality, it's selling them identity, because vendors aren't selling hiring solutions, they're selling hiring disdain. The labor market online on LinkedIn isn't really a place for people to look for work. It's a place for people to look down on those looking for work. And when U.S. employers cannot demand human proof of hiring deliverables from their vendors, aka demonstrate to me that you showed job seekers the respect, consideration, and quality we hired you to deliver, they reveal themselves not as customers of the talent industry, but as its deputized subordinates. The metrics vendors provide, time to fill, pipeline analytics, applicant volume, deliberately erase the job seeker user experience. The system is designed to demonstrate activity while avoiding accountability for how the U.S. citizens in that pipeline were actually treated. And everything is designed around making employers feel embarrassed to ask, how did this happen? The emotional infrastructure of disdain is the economic infrastructure of subordination of a stakeholder. Vendors don't just sell tools, they sell in-group status via disdain at the out-group. Once employers accept this positioning, vendors put employers in ego blackmail, where to question vendor dysfunction is to question the validity of the in-group identity status that they both share. Vendors selling disdain instead of empathy deliver ego blackmail, market dysfunction, and subordination wrapped in the feeling of being strategic and powerful. Employers become unpaid subordinates to the vendors that they themselves hired. As I previously said in other posts, lack of empathy is the hallmark of a labor market operating without trust, a profound detriment to every last economy that it touches. The very act of employers letting vendors comfortably describe an end user as worthless in front of them announces the reality of the market collapse. Imagine bringing your child to Disney World. If Disney World was a daycare, watching the owners disabuse, talk down to your children in front of you, and genuinely thinking your kids were about to have a great time. Imagine walking into that diamond market, the De Beers analogy I made, watching a diamond person, nobody wants to get married anymore, while he looks side-eyes your girlfriends, and thinking that your girlfriend's about to have a good time. They're not. The only reason a vendor talks down to an end user in front of the customer is because they're not selling you a functional market. They're trying to get repeat customers for the dysfunction they're about to deliver by already announcing who they're going to blame that dysfunction on. This isn't what a functional diamond market looks like. And I've since discovered that there's a couple of organizational psychologists, Argyris and Sean. I'm sorry, I learned these things from reading, not listening, but these people talk about self-sealing closed feedback loops and defensive reasoning. Corrupted feedback with defensive reasoning, organizational psychologist, therapist, organizational psychologist, sorry, I can't say words. System theory stuff. Okay. Third role, structural laborer. Ghost jobs are not accidents. Evergreen postings, job postings are not strategic. They are the impoverishment of the American population. They are clickbait, and employers unwittingly are the ones producing it. Every time an employer posts a hiring ad without real intent to pipeline, explore talent, or collect resumes, or just to see what's out there, they are creating content that's valuable to platforms but impoverishes American citizens. The content is then promoted, boosted, recycled, and duplicated, counted in job market statistics as demand, used to train AI models about the state of hiring, and sold back to employers as analytics, insight, and talent pool access. None of that produces a single hire. It impoverishes the U.S. population. Social media, like clickbait, babies laughing, is a fun game. Trying to pay rent by forcing yourself to click on some of these things that are just junk, that's not a game. That's you being comfortable taking homes and housing away from people. That's what that is. They are not just buyers. They're laborers in the attention economy that replace the hiring economy. The labor market online is an attention economy with an economic suit. The biggest irony, the more ghost jobs they post, the worse their real hiring becomes and the worse their sales become, because they're actively destroying their own signal environment. They're actively destroying the own economy that they're required to sell their products. They're not just trapped in the system. They're working for it. This kind of clickbait content indeed would have to create without them, but with them, it gets created for free. Unpaid, unaware, and thinking in strategy. The lack of self-reflection in this behavior is off the charts. If this were simply a metaphor, there wouldn't be data behind it, but the data has been describing the structural breakdown for 2 decades. just not in these terms. Take Hidden Workers Untapped Talent from Harvard Business School in 2021. It estimates that 27 million job seekers are filtered out by automated hiring systems, not because they lack skills, but because platforms reward filtering volume over matching accuracy. The study frames this as inefficiency. But what it doesn't say is that every rejected applicant fuels the engagement and retry cycle that platforms monetize. That's not just an efficiency, that's revenue. It doesn't say how many of those applicants were ever notified that it was the ATS system they didn't get through. How many of them ever had an opportunity to adjust their resume to make it better? How many of them got any sort of notification at all? How many of them lost housing, lost the ability to send their kids to college, lost the ability to send their kids to the doctor because of this? It doesn't talk about that. In summary, employers purchasing ATS systems without interrogating their impact are acting as market enforcers for the profitable, prolonged unemployment of the U.S. workforce. Consider the ghost jobs research, Wall Street Journal, NPR, Resume Builder, etc. They report that 20 to 40% of postings are not meant to be filled. Employers admit out loud that they post them to build pipelines, test the market, or boost brand visibility. Hence my grocery store built for investors, not for hungry customers analogy. What the research doesn't name is that these fake postings function as demand signals, producing the illusion of opportunity, which platforms rebroadcast to job seekers as proof of a healthy market. The employers think they're testing demand. In reality, they're performing labor for the attention market, generating market signals that keep job seekers applying. This flabbergasting to me that we've ever construed the market that job seekers didn't build, that they didn't pay for, that they're desperate to find work in as an issue of the labor force, when it's very clearly an issue of the vendors and the customers that are continuing to buy from vendors that create such dysfunction. In summary, employers are acting as unpaid content producers for an attention economy that profits from the impoverishment of the U.S. citizenry while enriching talent industry vendors. Now look at JOLTS, Job Openings, Labor, and Turnover Survey from the Bureau of Labor Statistics from 2016 to 2025. It shows the hires to openings ratio dropping from 0.91 to 0.74, hitting 0.56 in some quarters. More job postings, fewer hires. Economists often blame demographics or mismatch, but the pattern aligns perfectly with platform revenue growth. It's not rocket science. Watching people miss this is like watching people can do differential equations, forget how to add. It's just 1 + 1. More postings do not mean more hiring, only more signal, more churn, more unpaid engagement, more unpaid labor from the U.S. workforce that's desperate to find food. In summary, employers are generating demand signals that create prolonged unemployment, free labor for platforms, revenue for vendors, impoverishment for the U.S. citizens. Or the lost generation labor market outcomes for post-Great Recession entrants. This is from Berkeley 2010 and 2021. It's a longitudinal study. It shows that prolonged unemployment leads to wage scars that last decades. The literature calls this a human capital loss. What it doesn't ask is who benefits from prolonged retries. Again, I've said this before, just think about this like a detective story. Cui bono? Who benefits? The talent vendors benefits. It's very straightforward. If retry cycles create monetizable engagement, then scarring is not just a labor outcome, it's a design outcome. In summary, employers participating in systems that profit from retry cycles without demanding that those systems give accountability to job seekers in the labor force enabling decades of wage suppression for American workers, American citizenry. But in general, this benefits them too, because why would they have to pay Americans better when if Americans lose their job, they just become socially mandated free revenue generators for the talent industry? It's just economic conscription, to the worst version of American Idol ever. These studies are correct in their data, but incomplete in their interpretation. They describe individual suffering or market inefficiency, but what they're really documenting is a realignment of roles where job seekers become unprotected consumers and unpaid revenue engines, and employers become enforcers of a profitable unemployment and unpaid laborers for platform revenue. The data is not wrong. It's just read through the wrong role lens. Every study is looking at actors, but the failure lies in assigned roles. It's a two-sided market. I didn't make up the rules. Richer and Giroux did. Two-sided markets have very clear outcomes and very clear behavior that you follow in if you want them to work. None of those behaviors are being operated within. And it's not confusing. What's confusing to me is what logical fallacy led to this lack of understanding. The system didn't break because workers lacked skills or employers lacked candidates. It broke because both sides had their economic roles quietly reassigned by the incentive architecture of online hiring. What repair actually means, repair is not innovation, it's realignment. Two-sided markets there's nothing to innovate in them. You just need to realign the roles. A functioning labor market doesn't need job board 3.0 or AI for talent. Those solutions accelerate collapse. Again, I could speak about it again. Jevons paradox. Seriously, I don't understand what the question is on this. If you've taken economics, adding AI to employer side will cause further, more dramatic collapse. It's a Jevons paradox. Jevons talked about it in the 1800s. It's really straightforward. It's two-sided. Jevons paradox. You can talk to any economist who studies these things. But the job applicant perspective. So what do you do with the labor market where both sides lost their original role? Again, in reality, you don't need to build a new tool. You need to restore the missing structural function. The job applicant perspective is not another hiring platform. It reinstates the two roles a market cannot function without. Job seekers are protected consumers with the right to review, verify, and protect themselves from false or harmful postings. TJAP makes job postings reviewable by job seekers. We're talking about reviewing hiring intermediaries, not employment, hiring intermediaries, this $600 billion market that exists without regulation or reputational mechanisms. We're giving it that. It creates accountability that platforms currently escape. When employers know their hiring practices will be visible, ghost jobs become costly rather than free. Let them choose to post them and let the outcomes fall where they may. The issue isn't not being allowed to post them. The issue is they're facing no repercussions for it. If they face repercussions, then when they make that choice, they're making it while accepting accountability for it. Employers as authentic demand not just signal generators, but accountable market participants whose hiring intent can be trusted. Employers gain access to candidates who trust the signal environment isn't polluted with ghost jobs. The quickest way to tell me that you don't know what online hiring is to assume that it's a trusting market. Nobody trusts the job market. Not a single person actually using it. The only people who think it's trustworthy are the people who are operating and owning it. It's obviously a collapsed market. So, we want to rebuild that trust. Real demand becomes distinguishable from noise, helping qualified candidates reach the right roles. It's not innovation. User reviews is a straightforward thing. Uber it's straightforward. We're not trying about I talk about this not as a paradigm shift, but a paradigm restoration. Richer and Giroux were very clear about two-sided markets. We violated every last one of those principles. We need to stop violating those principles and the market will heal itself because the concepts are still the same. We just need to operate as if that's what they are. Closing. The digital labor market is economic nonsense. It's really gross. It's silly. It's a textbook case of a collapsing two-sided market. Whether you look at it from cybernetics, systems theory, game theory, information theory, economics itself, it's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. Of course it's collapsing. Think of it this way. It's a mandated use of Uber with no driver reviews, a mandated use of Airbnb with no host feedback, mandatory participation in a market that profits the longer it keeps you from finding paying work. There's no version of this market setup that doesn't collapse civic societies. It doesn't exist. 1 and 1 is still 2. Every other two-sided market, from ride shares to rentals, is built on bi-directional feedback and accountability. Glassdoor even made employment itself accountable. The online talent industry is the glaring exception. It has operated outside these fundamental market norms since its inception. The result isn't just inefficiency, it's systemic economic collapse driven by hiring intermediaries, playing out in prolonged unemployment, wage suppression, and the erosion of civic infrastructure that stabilizes democratic society. Realigning economic incentives in the labor market is the foundation for economic and civic repair. It doesn't change overnight, but it won't change until we stop the bleeding. It's obviously just a gut wound that's, bleeding. A platform that silences job seekers while monetizing their engagement cannot claim neutrality. It can't. That business model is structurally opposed to market function. At minimum, platforms must be accountable to the job seekers who supply their revenue stream unpaid. Yeah. That's why I talk about this as Yelp in a world of professionally mandated fine dining with no health department and no FDA, because it is. We must create a labor market beholden to the needs of the people who supply its profit and depend on it for survival. A labor market designed around employer needs alone becomes an engagement trap. One designed around job seeker needs, or one that loses business when it fails to meet their needs, delivers hiring solutions for everyone. Yeah. That's the sell. Anyway, I love economic theory. I think it's great and super fun because it's like systems theory. Like, for me, it's like systems layered through math and sociology, and you get yourself economics. Yeah, it's kind of fun. But regardless, I do also like to focus on the business aspect of it too. So I might be doing that a little bit more in the near future. But I love talking about this stuff. I think it's really fun. But as ever, these are invitation to conversation and engagement. You should always use your discernment. I think the internet makes the world into a snowstorm. So you always want to trust drivers on the road, but you want to use your discernment as much as possible. Yeah, that's it. Please like, follow, share, and repost. Please engage. If you're an academic person, I would love to talk to you about your grad students and see if they're interested in doing some original research. It could be fun. Also for publishing papers and stuff like that. And if you're somebody else, I'd be happy, interested to speak as well. And if you're not those people, that's okay too. Please feel free to ask questions. I think we all have things to share and learn from each other. And I like to leave myself open to what I don't know that I don't know, because I think when we silo things too hard, we lose access to that information. Anyway, thanks very much, and have a good one out there.